What if you could automate filing your income tax return in minutes instead of hours just by using no-code tools? In this video, I'll show you exactly how I'm building an automation using NA10, Airtable, and Microsoft Excel to help you organize and fill in your income tax returns in minutes instead of hours. I'll show you exactly how the system works and how I'll integrate AI into the system in the future. Hi, my name is Kevin Kabu. I'm the co-founder of a digital and creative agency called The Digital Monkeys. We're an award-winning agency with a portfolio of top global and Pan-African brands like Sanlam Allianz, Shell, Weetabix, Carrefour, and MultiChoice. I have 10 years of global experience building business from the ground up, and I've also led the finance function for The Digital Monkeys for the past 9 years. And so if you're an accounting firm in Kenya, a tax consultant, or a business that wants to learn how to use AI and automations to save time on income tax returns for yourself or your clients, this video is for you. So I'll walk through a demo of the product I've developed, and it's just 3 simple things. So the first thing, you just need to upload your trial balance, your assign bucket keys, which is the manual bit, and then the automation will automatically fill in the IT2C. So one quick thing I want to show you is this is where the data with which the automation will create will sit, and this is where the IT2C sheet will sit. So you can see right now, we don't have any data, and these are just other bits of information, and we don't have any output. So that's just our starting point. So uploading the trial balance as the first step is achieved by just filling in a form. So I'm going to call this demo filing, demo company filing, income tax return. Okay, the client company name is, let's call it Demo Company Limited. For the PIN, I'm just guessing. The year of income is 2025. Period start is January. And the last day is December. That's the year that's the period we're going to be using. And here's where our first step comes in. So we just upload the trial balance. So I have some dummy data here that I'm just going to upload. And the filing status, in case you can see it, is draft. So once I submit this data goes into a small database, and you can see that it's coming here. So this is Airtable, which will be managing our data. So once this comes in here, there's an automation that's already running that is supposed to map the TB line. So this is that automation, and we'll get into the build in a second. So when we come in here to the tax filing, you can see these TB lines have started mapping, and this is done automatically. So let's come in here. If we have a look at recently uploaded, you'll see that demo company is there, and you can see that it's just bringing in the data line by line from the trial balance into Airtable for us to complete step 2. Okay. Right, so it's done. And then we're going to move on to step 2, which is assigning bucket keys. So what this is the way in which the systems will be able to communicate with each other. And it's simply done by coming in here to the bucket keys, and we're going to assign some line items to enable the automation to run and fill in the income tax return automatically for you. So we come in here and I'm just going to map a few lines. This is not the best allocation, but bear with me, especially if you're an accountant. All right, so I'm done with mapping a few of them for purposes of the demo. So when we come back here into our tax filing, so we've seen that the trial balance lines, we've mapped them, we've assigned the bucket keys, and now it's ready for filing. So what you just come and do within the system is you just click approved for filing, okay? And this triggers this second automation here, which now enables us to actually get the tax return filled in, okay? So you can see Excel has opened automatically. If you come in and look here, you can see there is this new file that has been created as a result of the automation. And now when we come into our outputs, we can see IT2C Demo Company 2025 has been filled in. There's a file there when it wasn't there before. So once we open that, you can see that there is data inside here, and this data is coming from the actual assigning of the bucket keys that we did from the data we have in Airtable. So now let's get into the build. Tax automation system that will make life easier for accounting firms and businesses going forward in 2026. And the reason why I'm doing this, and a bit of context as to why this came to my mind, was two main things. The first one is there's some changes that KRA announced in November of 2025, where they'll start validating income and expenses when it comes to filing income tax returns for both companies and for individuals. My focus is specifically companies because of the experience I've had running a business, and it can be quite hectic. And with this change, where you'll have your expenses validated so that the income that you pay tax on is validated by what you can support it with, whether you support it with eTIMS invoices, withholding tax, like receipts and import records. This will make it a bit more difficult for companies going forward in this next year of 2026. So that was one of the things, and I was like, okay, if there's this whole move towards validation, is there an opportunity for automating some of the facets? And the second source, or the second reason why I was moving in this direction, is because of the APIs that GoverConnect offers. So this is more of an exploratory thing. And there are a couple of reasons why this direction is something that I'm moving in, because of the problems that I've seen. So this particular income tax returns for companies, something called the IT2C, is very repetitive and time consuming. So you find it can take an accountant 1 to 3 hours to fill in one return. And this repetitive side comes from you've already done the audited accounts, you've gotten them signed by the directors of the company that you're auditing, and then now it comes time to fill in this monster of an Excel sheet called IT2C. So there's a lot of repetitive work there because you have to go line by line by line and put in the numbers into the cells. And this is a macros-enabled sheet, so there's a lot of limitation in what you can do. And it's very guided. So that's the first thing. The second thing that is an issue around this whole issue around tax and trying to see what solutions can be there in terms of automation, clients are very last minute. So I've been one of the people who's been very last minute over the years that I've done business. So you have if your accounting year ends in December, you have from January until June to give your auditor or accountant, the records that go into building these audited accounts. Most of the time, we end up doing it last minute. Instead of starting in February, you end up pushing it to May. And then the workload becomes quite a bit for the person who's actually doing these returns and the audited accounts, especially when it's large scale. And I spoke to a couple of friends in the field and colleagues, and it can be quite hectic because we are last minute. And because this whole thing is last minute and the nature of tax returns, accuracy is also another issue, which is the third problem, where you find a mistake can be made. And when you're making mistakes around tax returns, they can be very costly, because these returns are what are used to validate the size of your business. It's used to calculate how much tax you're paying. An extra zero or less of a zero here is a big issue. So I just started thinking, can't technology do this? And I jumped into ChatGPT to do some research, and I found out, yes, it can. So the question I asked is it possible to auto-populate an Excel sheet that is macros enabled using an AI automation? And you can see, short answer is yes, absolutely. So when I went down this path, it was quite a bit of time spent researching, but the general gist of it all is that yes, this can happen. So when I also got these insights into how to move into this thing, the solution from a minimum viable product point of view was trying to see how we can use a technology stack that is simple and building it in a way that I don't have any coding experience. So trying to see if I can use some no-code tools and process the data that is part of filing an income tax return for a company, and a bit of automation to reduce this repetitive, time-consuming stuff, layered on with human review. So this is what I want to show you in terms of what I've gotten to. It's still a work in progress. And the tech stack that I'm using is very simple. I'm using Microsoft 365 as the base, because at the end of the day, that's where Excel sits. And Airtable is a tool. It's like an Excel sheet on steroids. So it has quite a few functionalities that you can piece in together, and to get the result that you desire, you have a lot more control. And then there's this automation tool called N8N, which handles the automation layer. And then there's a runner. So the runner is what enables us to take this data that we've processed and fill in the IT2C sheet. So that's the simple tech stack. And now I just want to jump into the workflow of this MVP and how it looks. So what does the workflow look like? I want to walk you through the Airtable structure based on the tech stack that we're using. So Airtable is our database, and there's 3 tables that I've put in as a structure that enables this workflow to actually do the thing that it's supposed to do. So the first table is a table called the tax filing. So this table basically just holds all the returns that you're handling. So if you have multiple clients, or there are multiple companies you're dealing with, this table is what holds all those filings. And then we have the TB line. So the basis of this automation is using the trial balance and the line items inside there to actually create the returns in an automated way. So this table just holds all the lines in the TB for us to be able to map and automate onto IT2C. And this universal tax buckets is basically the brain of this entire thing. And this is where AI will come in a future version of it. So basically explained, you have a bucket key that enables us to map the figure that is in the trial balance to the cell in the IT2C. So this is not a comprehensive list. Again, this is just an MVP. So it's just basically the bucket key, what it covers, where it is at in the specific accounting terminology, or where it'll sit in IT2C, and a quick description of it, then a classification. So this is the brain, and this is what needs to be expanded over time. And how do we get the filings into Airtable? So what I did, I created a form that enables us to actually put in the tax filing. So we can just go ahead and do some testing around this. So I have some dummy data of a company called ABC Limited. So I'll just say 2025 tax return. That's what I'll call it. And the client is ABC Limited. KRA PIN
this you'll be able to put in the actual KRA pin of the company. The year of income or return is 2025. Period start, I'm going to use January as the period start, and January 1st and December 31st as the period end. And the data that I'm going to be working with is a trial balance. So let me just see if I can quickly drag and drop the data here. So I have this here, ABC Limited, so I can upload that file. And for this use case, we're not going to use the audited accounts. We're just going to focus on the trial balance to validate this MVP. And we're going to have this as draft. So this is going to be as a draft, the filing status, because we haven't done anything about it yet. So that's a draft, and we just submit this and see what happens. So this form is linked to the tax filing table. So if we come into this tax filing and come into the data, we should be able to see ABC Limited. It was empty. Now we have the data from the form. So once this comes in, the next step around here is we need to map the trial balance lines. So when we're mapping these trial balance lines, there's two things here. So we have Airtable, which is going to be talking to our automator, which is N8N. And N8N has a couple of nodes inside there that we can just walk through. And how these two communicate to each other is through this automation. So you can see here, trigger trial balance lines mapping. So what this is just a view that once, if you can just see how that looks like, when the trial balance is not empty and the filing status is in draft, then it triggers this data, because you could have multiple tax filings. So we just want to focus on the ones that haven't been mapped yet, because the workflow is you first upload it, then you map the trial balance lines. So this particular automation triggers this workflow here. So this workflow basically is just a webhook that is constantly listening it out. N8N is constantly listening out to Airtable for information, what is going on. And this view, the filter, is what enables this webhook to start running. So the automation is off right now and it's in just testing status. So you'll find that it has a bit of data because I've already tested this, but for this thing, for this tutorial, we're going to go ahead and just do it afresh. So let me show you how to set this connection up. So the first thing I did is I just put in TB lines mapping as the path and I set it to post. And here is this URL that we are going to plug into Airtable. So let me just copy this and I can show you how this works. So when I come in here and I come into the automations, you can see I have this automation of TB lines mapping. So basically it's when a record enters a specific view. So let me actually just see if I can set this up afresh for us to walk through. So create automations. So here we go. This is TB. Oh, my computer has hung. TB lines mapping N8N trigger. So what I'm gonna do is we've seen that in my Airtable, it enters a specific view based on filters. Like a filing enters a specific view based on the filters that are there. So basically when a record enters a view, so that's what I'm looking at. And the table that I'm selecting is tax filings. Select the view. The view is trigger TB lines. Okay. So when I'm triggering TB lines here, what we're going to do is we're going to use suggested record, or you can choose the record. So this is what exists, okay? What we're going to do is we're going to run a script, okay? And this script that we're going to run is basically what is going to communicate with this, with NA10. So let me just copy paste this script here. That is, we already have. So this script basically is what enables these two tools to communicate. So I'm just pulling this from here. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to edit the code. And I'm going to delete what is there. I'm just going to fill in that, okay? So I'm going to take this webhook URL because this is a variable that we need. And remember that webhook that we were talking about, because we need to actually map them. So it's fetching this webhook URL. Let's come back here into NA10 and we pick that. We come back into Airtable, just copy and paste it and make sure that this webhook URL is exactly the same, like lowercase and uppercase. That's why I just copy pasted it from here so that we don't have an error. And then let me add another input variable. You can see this record ID here. That's what I'm going to pull. It's the exact same thing that I want. And the value is from this tax filing table that I've set. There's this thing called a record ID. So you can see it here. Okay. So I think we're ready to go. Let's get them to communicate to each other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to listen out for the event here in NA10. And then I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to test so that the two can communicate with each other. So it should take a few seconds. So you can see the test ran successfully. The record ID has been pulled and you can see it here as well. Okay, let me just put it here. I can put it as JSON. So you can see it's pulled in this record ID that represents the tax filing. Okay, so if we were to come in here, you'll see that this record ID is what is sitting here in NA10. So once we've pulled that in, let me just pin this. What I want to do in NA10 is actually get the tax filing and the details, because remember the step that we're moving into is mapping the trial balance lines. So how do I do this? I need to connect N8N with Airtable. So I want to create a new credential so that you can see this. And it's very easy to do this because you could just read the docs and the docs just walk us through how to set this up. So basically, we are going to use a personal access token and we create a new token using the scopes guide. So here, I'll just click this link here. This will take me to that section in Airtable. So basically what I'll do is I create this token. I'd already created it before, but let's just do it again. IT2C, NA10 test 2. Then the scopes. So the scopes, we saw them here is data read, write, and schema basis read. So let's come back in here, read, add another scope, data records write, and schema basis read. Okay. Then access, which data do you want NA10 to have access to? So for this, I'll just add all resources because it'll make it easier if you're trying to build this for yourself or you're trying to test it out. So I'll just create the token. And this is what I copy and paste. It's good to save this because you will not be able to see it again if you don't save it. So what I do is I just come in here, I copy and paste that token. And then what I just need to do here is I save, and it's supposed to validate all this for me. Let me know if the connection is working. Oof. Problem in creating the credential. What seems to be the challenge? So Let's just come back in here. I've copied the clipboard. Access token. Let's save. Let's see. We're good. So I guess it was just an error of copy and pasting. So the connection tested successfully. Then here I just call it IT2C test 2 and A10. Okay. And I save that. So now NA10 is able to now communicate with Airtable. So what I want to do is I want to get a record. So that's fine. The operation is get. What I'll do is I'll just pick, you can pick it from the list. And the list here is IT2C. And then we come in here from list. Remember, we're getting it from the tax filing because that's where all the data is sitting, the tax filing table. There we go. And for this, what you do is we need to pull the data based on the record ID. So I just want to show you what that looks like. So pulling that test data with the record ID basically is just this record ID here. All you do is you just come and drag and drop it into this record ID field. And what we do is we execute the step, unpin and test. You can see it's operating, it's moving. There we go. So you can see it's pulled in the data, ABC Limited tax return. It's pulled in all the fields that are there. Okay. So let's go back and see where we're at. Now the next node enables us to actually download the data that forms the trial balance, because Airtable cannot read this attachment as is. So the attachment that is here, Airtable does not know how to read this. This is just an attachment. So what we need to do is we need to get this data, download it, clean it, and then upload it back into Airtable. So that's what we're doing in the first step here. All we're doing is we're just going to download the trial balance file. So this is just trying to pull this specific data, because the data that is saved, this trial balance is saved as a URL in Airtable. So we need to just bring it in, and this is how it's done. You can see these double brackets here. It enables this transfer of that data. So all you just need to do is just type it out exactly. You can name your nodes how I've named them, but it's this specific URL here that's coming in. So upload trial balance, 0 URL. And then now once I execute this step, what you'll see here is it's going to pull in and create a file. So you can see here it's pulling in this file as an Excel sheet. Okay. Now this is what we'll now use to clean the data, and see the next function here is passing it into rows, making it into rows. So when you come into this data point, all we're doing is we're taking this Excel file that now is a file, and we're extracting that data from this Excel file and putting it into a format that we can now upload after cleaning into Airtable. So let me execute this step and you'll see what will happen. So these are just the entries you need to have. If you look at it as a table, you'll be able to see that now what we have is line items of this trial balance. Okay, so it's one line, one line, one line, one line. Okay. Then when we come back into this next step, what we need to do is we need to normalize this data, because it needs to fit in to the structure of the columns that we have here in TB lines, because it doesn't fit in exactly the same way. Okay. So what I want to do here is there's some JSON some JavaScript that we've put in here. So figure out which keys are from the first row. So we need to make sure that this one tax filing, this same record ID matches all it represents the data within this specific filing. So I'll leave this somewhere for you to copy and paste, and you can just copy and paste it exactly as it is. And once you execute the step, what it does is it now formats the data in such a way that it enables us to populate the Airtable that has the trial balance lines. Okay, so you can see right now these trial balance lines are empty. And what I want to do is I want to show you the next node where we create a record. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to create a record in N8N with all these trial balance lines. And I'm going to show you how we're going to do that. So again, remember the credential that we created? Just put that there. It's a record that we are creating. We can do it in terms of the list. So what we're coming in here is we're coming to pick the same IT2C automator project, and now the table is going to be a bit different. It's going to be the TB lines. Okay, so this is what we need now. So what I'm going to do is let's just delete all this and add them in manually for you to see. So add column to send. We're going to send the account name, right? This account name, we're getting it from here. We're sending in the account name, right? We're going to send in an account code. Do we have it? Nope. So we're going to send in the filing. The filing is filing ID. Going to bring it in here. Okay. We're going to bring in debit. You can see the debit is here. We're just pulling in the data. We're going to come in the credit. Let's fill in the credit. And then we're going to come in and pull in net amount. There we go. And I think that's it. I don't think we need anything else from here. Okay. So let's see what we're going to get when we put this out. When we execute the step, what you're going to see, I just want to counter check here. Filing debit credit net amount. So the bucket key is what we're going to fill in. This filing record ID, I think will be pulled in automatically. Okay. So let's come in back into N8N. Sorry. Yeah, there we go. So let me execute this step. And what you'll start to see here as it starts populating is, let's go back to our TB lines. Let's see. Oh, it's expecting an array. So for the filing ID, with the error that we found, I'll just put in this record ID. Let's run it and see what it says. And maybe let me come in here. Expects an array. So let's make it into an array. I can see here it's reading array. So it's pulling from that. Let's see what happens. So let's jump back to Airtable and see where we're at. So you can see the TB lines now are mapping. So you can see what this automation is doing. It's mapping the trial balance lines. Remember how we had started discussing how, as this attachment, Airtable cannot turn it into a table. We have to go through this automation to list this out. So this is what N8N is enabling us to do. So it's just listing it there. We have the net amounts here. And this is part of mapping the TB lines. So once this is done, we'll go into assigning the bucket keys. And as we wait for it to complete, I just want to talk about these bucket keys because this is the brain. So what happens is there's some data within the IT2C sheet that is a reference point that we can use for us to be able to tell the automation that this particular figure belongs to this particular sheet and belongs to this particular cell. So that's what this entire universal tax buckets is. And this is where the opportunity for AI suggestions is, which is a layer we'll get to at a future point in time. So what we're just going to do here is this is going to be the most manual part of it all. And seeing as we've only have entries for the P&L of the IT2C, then what we're going to do is we're just going to do a minimal thing so that we can see how the automation works. It's just about testing it end to end before we move in. So I just want to talk a little bit about that in terms of what this mapping actually does. So this is where we'll just need to assign this particular side manually. And it's just for now as we are testing this minimum viable product. So let's see how far we've gotten to. Yeah. So we can see we are done. So the automation has successfully run and it's mapped out, as you can see here. It's mapped out all the fields. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to pin this. Let me pin this here. And then I'll save it. So now we are going to manually assign the bucket keys. So I'm going to come back here into Airtable. I'm going to go to the TB lines and I'm going to come in here to map. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just assign them a bucket key. As you can see, it's empty. So since we only have stuff from the P&L, I'm just going to go and scroll down and I'm going to look at sales. So sales, there's a bucket key called turnover, sales revenue. So we have that. And then we come into accountancy fees. We have this line item called this also describes, so this is just a universal like mapping. So even if it's legal expenses, it covers accounting fees because professional and consulting fees are there. Bank charges, they're there. So such bank charges. Then, actually, let me do it in a bit of an easier way. Yeah. So I think this is a good start to test. So let's see how we can move into the next thing. So now what we've done is we've done the assigning of the bucket keys as a test. And now let's run the actual automation that does the filing. And let me walk you through how it looks like. So this is another automation. So what it does is it retrieves this tax filing from Airtable. Let me just call it Airtable, so that it's clear. So it retrieves this from Airtable, then it prepares the return for automation, and then it fills in the IT2C locally. And I've configured a folder that has the documentation. What I'm going to do for now, I'm going to disconnect this node here because it was bringing a bit of an error when it came to uploading this file to Google Drive. Google Drive blocked the file, so I still need to troubleshoot that. So again, you can see we have this webhook, and this webhook is listening out for an event. And this event is when we come in to Airtable and have a look at what it's listening out to, it's listening out for this automation here, where we have, if we were to have something that is in tax automation, let's see the filing status, it's approved for filing. So what we need to do is we need to come in here. Once we've mapped the buckets, we just need to change the status here from draft to approved for filing. So let's say it's been mapped, ready for review, and now it's approved for filing, right? What happens is, in this view you have now this is ready for filing. So I'm going to create the actual automation workflow from scratch. I just want to create a new workflow. So the first node would be an Airtable webhook, a webhook function that listens out for what's happening on Airtable. Because remember, we've done the whole thing for filing. We've done the mapping of the TB lines, so it's ready for filing. So here, my first step, I'm going to come in, I'm going to look for a webhook. Method will be post. And I'm going to copy this. I'm going to take it into Airtable. Actually, before I copy that, let me copy this. Let me create a new automation so that we do it live. So create new automation. So when a record enters a view, then the table that we're looking at is tax filings, right? And the view that we're looking at is trigger tax filing, okay? And I'm just going to use a suggested record for this. This is what's going to be there. Let's move this to the side. Yeah. So we're going to run a script just like the last time. So let's run this script. When we come into this script, the inputs is going to be this particular one. We're going to have the variable here. So there's this webhook. Let's pick it exactly as it is. We put it in here, the value. We're going to go back here, and we're going to pull this value here. Okay. Just going to come back in here, paste it as it is. And the other thing that we're going to use, we're going to pull this record ID here. Okay, needs to be exactly the same. And what I'm going to do, so I'm just going to use the record ID, that. I'm going to map it to the record ID of the entry, okay? So let's see, let's listen out for this. Let's see what happens. Listen out for a test event. Okay, so it's listening out. Let's come back in here. Let's test this. Let's see whether the two will talk to each other. Great. So what it's done, it's pulled the data. You can see this record ID is there. So we can go back to the canvas and we can pin this data. Then the next thing would be get a record. So first go into Airtable. Say let's get a record. Here we go. So we're going to get this record. We're going to retrieve the record. Okay. So we had already connected that. We're getting the record. Operation is get. Right. Get a record. So we come in, we can get it from the list because we have our tables connected. And then we get this from list. The table is going to be tax filings. Okay. Record ID. I'm just going to pull this here so that it's always mapped automatically. And then let's execute the step. Okay. So what this is doing is just retrieving the actual filing from Airtable. Okay. So once that's done, rename this to get a tax filing. Okay, great. Then we come back to the canvas. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to search records. So here it's Airtable once again. Then we're going to search records. Okay, now we're searching for these TB lines. Okay. And what we're going to do is just want to open up this node as my reference point. And we're going to use this filter by formula. Okay. So this is what will enable us to get this data. Okay. So, and we're pulling from still the tax filing table, if I'm not wrong. So the tax filing table, yeah, it is the base is that one, HC. .3D5. So here we're pulling it from so we're pulling this from the TB lines. Okay. So I'm just gonna come here. It's gonna show you a different way of filling in the fields. So search, we're gonna get it by ID. So here's the base ID, and then we're gonna get this by ID, and we're going to use this table ID here. Okay. And here we said filter record ID equals parenthesis JSON ID. Equals, yeah. Okay, so let's see if there's anything else that I need to do when I say return all. Any other settings? Return all. So basically, this is just going to use this ID to search through all the records and retrieve what is linked to what has been mapped. Okay, so that's what this does. And I'm seeing here, I do not have my other quote unquote. There we go. So this should be okay. Let's pull it in. Let's see what happens. So there we go. So it's pulled in. Yeah, you can see it's pulled in all the records, right, that we needed to have. So you can have here, you can see the bucket key undefined, some of them that we didn't map. Okay. So that finishes the first part of the automation. So now we've gotten all the records from the base. So now we'll come in here, we group them, we prepare the payload for the runner, and we convert to a file. This is to prepare it for an automation, okay? So what I'll do here is I just come into this node. It's JavaScript, and what it's going to do is it's just going to format it, okay? So it's supposed to group the trial balance lines and format it in a way that our runner can read it. So I just copy and paste that code. And I come in here, JavaScript, or is it code? There we go. Code in JavaScript. So there we go. Just filled it in. And I just need to see if there's anything. Run once for all items. Everything else seems to be the same. And in terms of settings, okay. There's nothing there in settings, it's the same thing. So the automation has run and successfully completed. So you can see it's pulled the data, it's grouped them into the TB lines that are ready for mapping to IT2C. Okay, so it's just done through some code. Then let's come back here, and now we're going to add another JavaScript block. And this is now to prepare this payload for the runner. Okay. So what this looks like. It's just basically converting it into something that our runner will be able to read, because our runner is running on the machine locally, and it's in Python. So let me come in here, just copy paste that into it. Okay. Great. Prepare payload for runner. Done. Let's go back, pin the data so that we don't have to come back into this step. Then we're going to convert this to a file. So let me just zoom out, make it a bit easier for us. So convert to file is the next one. And there's some key settings that we need to put into this node. Payload string data. Okay. So that's just what we put here. Text, convert text to file. We're going to call it group TB lines buckets.json. So this is what we're going to call it. Okay. So convert to file. So we're converting this into something that can run on our convert to, is it a text file? Yes. Convert to text file. So once we convert that to text file, here we're just gonna write payload string exactly as it's written here. Okay, payload string. Add option. If we're going to do file name, it's just we can pull this here. Filing ID, right? Buckets.json. So that's what we're going to call the file. Okay, so I'm just setting it here. It's pulling automatically from a different place. So let's execute that step. All right, here we have it. So we have the file extension as a JSON, which is what we need to enable us to run this automation, okay? So the next step is actually going through the runner, and we save this payload to Mac, okay? So that then it can execute the command, okay? And this is where my runner is. So what we'll do is we'll just copy paste this, and we're going to write files to disk so that it can now activate the runner on my computer. Write files. There we go. So and then we're going to have it's ABC Limited. It's going to be the name of this. We need to save it there. Just remember, this is what we've just called our file, right? Remember when I was renaming it to JSON, so we want to save it there. Execute this step. So now this is being written onto my computer. Let's see. Write file to disk. So here I didn't change that. Need to write file to disk, and we're gonna call it data. Path name is that. Then we come in here. This will be the name of that file. .json. Okay. There we go. Let's execute the step. There we go. And then now it's just execute command. And what this is just the pathway to, all this is the pathway to where the runner is on my computer. And this is what it looks like. This is what the command looks like. It's basically saying that now run this JSON that is sitting on my computer. So let's do it. Then we come in here and just pick .json. So I just want to take this opportunity to explain exactly what these nodes mean. So we've prepared this payload for the runner. We're converting it to a file, saving it to the machine, and executing a command. So all this is housed in this specific project called IT2C project. It has these specific folders inside there, and that payload that we're downloading will be saved here. So you can see it's not yet there. And then the output of executing the script will be saved here. Okay. So I just want to walk through that step by step so that you can see what that looks like. So when I come in here, what I'm going to do is I want to save it in this way. So /users, this is the pathway. Kevcabo IT2C project, which you've just seen, then data, then this is the file that we'll save there. Okay. So once I execute this step, you're going to see that it's going to pop up here. So you can see we didn't have it before. This automation, I've saved it to my machine. Then we go back and we need to execute the command. So the command is just running this code and referencing the file or this JSON that is supposed to run. So once we execute it, this is the last step that is going to take us to actually filling in the IT2C sheet. So let's just watch what happens. And then it's done. So it's executed that node successfully, okay? So you see it opened and closed Excel. And then now let's come to our outputs. And here we have it. We have our filled in sheet. So if we check it out, we're going to see that it was able to open up the Excel sheet. And come in here and fill in. This is what an IT2C should look like. So it's filled in the turnover based on Airtable. And if you want to see that, you can see that here, this is the data for turnover. If we look at mapped TB lines, so you can see 25, 530, 747. Okay. So when we come in here, you can see 0.99. So 147, accountancy fees. It's under here, legal and professional. So it just actually just mapped out all the things, the fields that we had actually put bucket keys for. And it's done that automatically. So that's how the automation works. And in future, what we'll have is an AI mapping layer for the bucket keys, so it can suggest the bucket keys that you want, and including something to validate expenses. I'm still thinking through how that will work. And if you want to have access to this automation, I'm going to provide a link to a list or a waiting list that you can fill in if you're an accountant or accounting firm or tax consultant or a business who just wants, to experiment with this. And from there, now we can get access towards the tool once you join the waiting list. And yeah, drop any comments in terms of what you'd want to understand, what you'd want to know. And yeah, that brings us to the end of today's video. If you want to learn how to create an AI clone of yourself to help you with whatever it is you want in your business, from marketing to training, please watch this video here where I cover how to create an AI clone of yourself that's realistic, speaks like you, using HeyGen and 11 Labs. Thanks for watching, guys.